Hi, it's Meta Spencer. Today is Sunday, May 26, 2024, and this is a day for a town hall. We have a global town hall on the last Sunday of every month, hosted by Project Save the World. And my guests are about to arrive, and so I'm going to let them in. Hi, everybody. We've got 2, 4, 5 guests already. There's William. Would that be Bill Geimer?
It would be, yes. Hi, Meta.
Hello, how are you? Nice to see you again. And here's Marilyn Krieger, the cat lady, CCBC. I don't know what that is. What's it an acronym for, Marilyn?
Certified Cat Behavior Consultant.
Okay. Next time I have a cat that misbehaves. Boy, I had one that would have been a real doozy for you, but I had to put it down, in fact. Here comes Mike Nickerson. Well, is this Mike?
It is. Eating my lunch, so I won't smile at you for just a little bit.
All right, that's fine. I believe in eating lunch.
I can smile at you now, but then
Okay.
I'll be back.
Yeah, all right, very good. Anyway, here's Ashok Malik. Hello, unmute yourself, sir, and tell me all about yourself, because I don't know you.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Ashik from Jammu and Kashmir, India. So I'm an academician.
You're saying you're Indian? Oh,
yeah, from Kashmir. Yeah, from Kashmir, India. Yeah.
I'd like to hear your version of what's happening. And here's Bill Lycum, our urban wildlife man. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Good. All right.
Overloaded as usual, but doing okay.
Well, that's the way we're all supposed to be, overloaded. It's
running to catch up, huh?
Yeah, it's better for us than if we're not. And here we have Barbara Ledger. Unmute yourself and tell us who you are. Do I know you? I don't think we've met.
No, I don't think we have. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Barbara Leger, and I live in 2 places in Northern California, where my children and grandchildren live, and where I live in my little office 24/7. And I live in Ukraine, where I have a home and beautiful gardens, and it's now sort of being used as a refugee facility. And I haven't been there for 4 years since COVID, but I have a team there and housekeepers and office, and I work in the public school system in Ukraine, developing curriculum to teach nonviolent communication and prevent, and to enlarge peace on earth.
Well, that is just wonderful. I'm really glad you came, because I want to hear a lot about your work and also a little bit more about where you are. You're in Northern California, where?
I'm in Redding, and I want to thank John German for making sure I got this invitation.
Very good. Well, thank John too. I'm a Northern Californian by choice. I will live there for 30 years, I guess. But I've lived in Canada now for more than
Canadian.
I'm a dual citizen. Yeah.
I'm a Canadian. I'm still a Canadian, but my kids are dual citizens.
Yeah. Where's your Canadian home?
I was raised on a farm without electricity outside of Montreal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm French Canadian.
I lived in Berkeley for 20 some years, and that's still where my heart is. I mean, I guess I got 2 hearts, because I'm happy here, but I will always feel Berkeley is very, very special to me.
I lived in Berkeley too. That's where I had my babies.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. We've got a lot of folks coming, and I want to introduce Lauren Zinn. Hello, Lauren. Do you can say hello to us? It looks like you on a bicycle or something. Where are you, Lauren?
Can you even hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Oh, okay. I'm in northern Michigan, and I'm sorry. I'm just my day got off schedule, so I just hoping I can listen in
Oh,
from
no,
Michigan.
no,
Yeah.
keep your camera going, because I don't believe I've ever had anybody on the show while they were riding bicycles before. And I think that would be
Okay.
a lot of fun to watch you. So
Okay.
don't turn off your camera.
Okay.
Netta,
Yeah.
I need to take a break, so I'll be back.
All right. Sure. Pop in and out. Just leave your camera on when you're here. And here's Patrick Chun. Hello, Patrick. Nice to see you again. You were with us about, what, 6 or 8 months ago?
Wow, your memory is much better than mine. Yes.
Oh, no, you reminded me in your letter. I wouldn't have remembered when. Anyway, so you can tell us a little bit about what you do. Why don't you do that now?
Okay, I'm Patrick Chun from
Oh,
sunny Vancouver. Actually, welcome rain because of all the forest fires in British Columbia here.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I volunteer for a nonprofit group called the World Civility Index. The World Civility Index is somewhat like your personal credit rating, but instead of measuring how well you can pay your bills, it measures how much manners, how much empathy, how much
Wow.
awareness you have.
Sounds
Wow.
like that thing, what do they call it? Emotional IQ.
Emotional IQ and so
Uh-huh.
on. And the group has been around for more than a decade. And I'm very happy to share with you that the World Civility Index is now part of the United Nations Sustainable Development, doing some very interesting work.
Can you send us a link in the chat, please?
Yeah, sure. I can do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
And we have Barbara Leger looks like her ears are flapping because and she does educational work in Ukraine, and I imagine there's a market for your work, for your products in Ukraine. If I'm right in guessing, is that right, Barbara?
Yes, our project is expanding exponentially almost in Ukraine right now, and also anywhere where there is conflict and anywhere where people want to exit this world of us and them and find our way to be together.
Okay, so you got a soulmate here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very good. How do you do, by the way, Barbara? How do you say you are? You didn't say you were in the education system. To me, that suggests that you're able to do some work from Northern California for Ukraine. Is that right? How does that work?
We have a nonprofit in California, and we're about to create a new one, which is solely educational. And we have a nonprofit in Ukraine, which I helped them to start, although I'm not legally connected to this one. And we have access through someone in the public education sphere who is an official who has approved of our curriculums, which started with nonviolent communication 4 years ago. I've been in Ukraine for 20 years teaching adults, but for 4 years, we're focused on schools, children, and their teachers.
All over the country, or just one city?
All over the country. We have, it's all, everything we do is virtual, although we have one staff person in Ukraine that now is starting to visit the schools and deepen the connection. But we've graduated over 17,000 children
Jeez.
from our 5 to 7 week projects in the past 3.5 years.
Please tell us about your projects. That is amazing.
It's an extraordinary, it is the gift of my lifetime, truly.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Patrick, I feel Patrick when you talk to him, I could feel that same kinship with your work that I have with mine. It's just, I don't know how I am so blessed. And so.
Okay. Well, now how do you do it? I mean, What is the program? Tell me a little about your curriculum.
It's called the Understanding Peace Project in the public school system, but it really started with something that I've been doing for 20 years called Putting Peace First. It's just been started as a practice, and then I started using it as a vehicle to get people's attention off of focused on the negative and onto the positive. And I realized that I used to be a business consultant, and I was always being brought into a crisis, to fix it. And I couldn't, it was great that I could fix it. And I've worked all over the world, including 7 years doing project development in the Soviet Union. And I've done an amazing amount of wonderful things, but I really got tired of fixing the problem. And I started working on the solution. And in business, it looked like joint ventures. If we could make friends with the people we thought of as the enemy, then we could have our hearts connected, then we would be less likely to be at war. This was in the 80s. And so we started Sister City, Sister City said, we don't need any people over there in the Soviet Union. We don't need them. And I said, you're crazy and you're going to really need them. And so that was that. But in 1992, like 6 months after the Soviet Union fell, we had our sister city. And between 84 and 92, we started meeting people there. So that got me going, and I consulted and did project development and on the basis of joint venture and creating partnerships. And I used to say, look, the best way to make sure there's no war is you send me your oldest child, I'll send you mine.
They used to do that, I think, in Venice, in the time when Venice was flourishing. Do you know that?
No, I didn't, but I'm glad to know there's a precedent for it.
I'm pretty sure that some of these cities that were more like city states, I think, they had enemies that, were enduring enemies.
Yes.
Worked out an exchange where they would exchange the sons of the top-ranking officials of
wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow, that is so exciting, Meta. Oh my gosh.
Look, I'm making this up because I know there's something true about it, but I learned it when I was in Venice, 35 years ago. So you better look it up.
I will.
Heard about it too.
Verify what I'm saying, because I could be, really wrong. But also, it isn't just, and maybe it isn't even mainly that they were training each other to like each other and that they could trust that because they liked each other, they wouldn't get into war. I don't think that was the main thing. The main thing is they're in effect, as long as they're occupying that other city and they're the son of the mayor or something, the mayor is not going to go bomb the city.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Precisely that. Precisely that.
I made that, these relationships up, but that's the general idea.
Well,
and
we're making it all up anyway, so why not make it up like that?
Make up a good one, yeah. as long as I label this as possibly a lie, but well intentioned anyway. I'm trying to tell the truth. Anyway,
so we got into that realm of the world where there was so much compelling something pulling me, and so now I was consulting to some teachers 4 years ago in Kiev, and I was doing nonviolent communication and putting peace first to show them how if your mind is troubled and you think parents don't accept the schools well enough or children don't respect the teachers well enough, it's very hard to be effective because your mind is full of your judgment and your opinions and your history and all of that. Personally, how I fell into this is I wanted to love my students and the people that I served, but I felt like a phantom because I couldn't love them all because I had opinions about why they were not this or that, or they were that or that. And it was my own desire to live without barriers that made me discover that if my mind and heart were at peace, irregardless of all of that, I could actually love them as they were, not as how I wanted them to be.
Well, there's a lot of truth in that, but I don't totally agree with it, because I think that when people do love each other, it's always a mixed feeling. You always know that so and so has certain weaknesses, and you got to watch out for them. And in fact, some of these people, you don't want them, near your silverware when you come to dinner, because you're not going to go. They're going to take it home with you. There are people that you love that these are the realities, and you've got to take into account what they're liable to do.
Well, I wasn't at that level of love. You see, that's unconditional love, and I wasn't
but you
there
don't
because
always
of my
feel
mind.
it. You don't. I mean, you love is many layered, and you don't
Yes.
necessarily. I mean, when you love somebody, you may also get very angry, or and that doesn't mean you don't love them. It means at this moment I love you, but I sure am angry.
Well, whatever it was, I used it for good. Whatever that was, it
That's
forced
right.
me to find and look for peace.
Mhm.
And that has created a whole new life. I
Well-
started when I was 54, and my son is retiring now. He's 55. He's one of my favorite people on earth. And I said, look how exciting it is. You've got a whole new life now, And I feel like now at almost 77, I've got my next 17 years is just starting, as my life is in cycles. And so now I'm training my team to take it. I'm growing more teams and showing them. And we're off to the Ivory Coast, and we're doing a project there.
You're not just in Ukraine. You're doing things in other countries.
Our vision is that everyone on earth knows that they have the ability and the capacity to put peace first, and that as we lean more and more towards that in all difficult circumstances, we open our heart and mind to that possibility. We enjoy the benefits of that reality, and we get so busy being in peace, we don't have time for war.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to let other people reply. I have a lot of things I could say about that.
I'm sorry to take so much time, but thank you for your juicy questions.
No. I'm not trying to shut you off. I'm trying to encourage other people to join the conversation, because I have a tendency to talk too much for a moderator.
Me too. Thanks. Kindred spirits on that as
But
well.
I'm wondering if you would give me a couple of minutes, because I'm breaking a rule today of my own, and I can't stay too long.
All right, go.
I debated a long time about whether to join the meeting today because I'm breaking a rule. But I will say thank you to Barb, because peace education, as you know, has been what I've been involved in. But I retired because of age and heart surgery and things that you know about that we've discussed on April 28th, and said, that's it. I'm out. I'm only going to do my writing now. Somebody else will have to take care of all the world's problems. I founded, as you know, the Greater Victoria Peace School. I have turned that over to wonderful members of my board who are keeping the Peace School going, and I'm out. But I could not resist the chance or the opportunity today to raise one more time for the peace community a warning about my beloved Canada that I have raised before to no avail. So I'm going to do it, and then I will listen for a while. I got fascinated by some of what I'm hearing, and then I will leave. Please understand.
Yeah.
A lot of the work that Project Save the World has been doing has been oriented around environmental and climate crisis research and how to literally save the physical planet. And then those of us who have worked in other areas of peace have done other things. Mine has been civilian casualties in war. But I just want to issue this warning. Beginning in January 2025, all of your work may disappear. It may all be useless. And Canada, and this is not hyperbole, can begin to become Austria in the 1930s. I've studied fascism in Italy in the 20s and 30s and Germany in the 30s. I'm a Canadian by choice, but I lived for 60 years in the United States and 6 years in Germany. And what I have tried to get across, and this is my last time, is that Canada, my beloved Canada, must begin to disengage and separate from the U.S. and start thinking about new markets and new policies and ways to isolate and disengage from the U.S. And if you think that Canada as Austria in the 1930s is hyperbole, consider these comparative developments, and I boiled them down to about 2 minutes. I'd love to talk more about them. In the U.S., the fascism focuses on education. The idea is to get rid of all those university elites and all those intellectuals, rewrite history all the way from grade 1 on up, and ban books. So the comparison between the U.S. and the nations and times I've mentioned is pretty stark. Second category, women. Women belong at home having children. And so
How are you coming to these
we have
conclusions?
policies operating in the U.S. in furtherance of that. Religion. Religion is to be virulent orthodoxy under the name of Christianity. Persecution.
Orthodox Christians like Russians.
Give me a chance to finish. Persecution of minorities, LGBT. Now we're talking about trans and bathrooms and other kinds of minorities at persecution as a distraction. Violence, thugs, January 6th, 2021. If you want the comparisons with Italy and Germany and Austria, fine, but I don't want to take up too much time. I want to issue this strongly believed statement that Canada needs to pay attention to these matters. Contradict me, argue, whatever, I don't care. I say Canada needs to begin to move toward independence.
All right, Bill,
Wow.
I think what we may also want to say is the world has to find some way to handle countries like, Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union and Stalin and stuff, or what may happen in January of 2025. As you pointed out, it's not just Canada. We've got to figure out how the whole world can survive that kind of thing. It's not, you can't just say, well, Canada, let's get off the planet and have our own little planet. I don't think it's going to work. But then now again, I talk too much. I know that Lita and Marilyn both were ready to pounce on you, Bill. So I don't know which one. I think Marilyn was first. So Marilyn, jump on him if you want.
Oh, I just wanted to know how you came to the conclusion on some of these, what you're calling facts that you've stated. Where are you getting your information, and how can you prove what you're saying? That's all I want to know. I want to know where this information's coming from.
Good question. Do you have anything specific? I have had discussions with members of my family in the United States about books being banned. And my son is actually in support of that. I believe that the legislatures particularly in Florida and Texas, have passed laws indicating that we can't have white kids feel uncomfortable about the history of race in the United States. There are all kinds of specific things. If you have a specific one, I will certainly try to answer, because that's a very good question.
Well, I think you have both going on. I mean, I think you're also referring to, I don't want to get political, but I'm just going to say I'm very much against Trump. And if Trump gets reelected, I hope he doesn't, I can see what you're saying going in more of that direction, but I don't think maybe I'm Pollyanna, and it's my hope that maybe cooler heads will prevail. Let's put it this way, but we're not there yet. And I was going to ask you why January of 2025? Why did you choose that date?
Well, I chose that as the starting date because that's the day Mr. Trump would be sworn in and would be bring along with him people that we can recognize today who have very clearly said what they intend.
Well, hopefully this will not happen. Hopefully, I mean, let's just hope that cooler heads will prevail. That's all I can say.
I share that hope, believe me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hurt to begin to turn our minds toward that possibility. And of course, Ned, I'm not suggesting that Canada try to go off by itself and ignore the world. But unfortunately, we are divided up into things called nations, and we've got these weird artificially drawn boundaries. And so we call something Canada, which is really a wonderful patchwork of diverse things that never probably should have been together anyway. But we call it Canada, and I love it. I'm so thankful that 24 years ago we got out of the U.S. And I think I've mentioned it. I spent 8 years as a paratrooper in the U.S. Army. And I just and thankful that we left, and I love Canada, and it has so much to offer. But this idea that
Bill, I want to move on now. I want Richard, because he's had his hand up patiently. Richard.
Thank you very much, Meta, and thank you, Bill, very much as well. And to Marilyn, as a doctor, we need to prevent problems before they arise, and therefore we must take action now and be cognizant of what is happening now.
Yes.
And I agree with Bill that if Trump does get in, we will go back to the 1950s. That's when America was great, according to some people. But what I feel now is that this is an opportune time to support our students, both in terms of the U.S. and in Canada. They are trying to get the universities to divest. As you say, Bill, years ago, Canadian universities did basic research and were funded by government. Now we've gone to the American model, where universities are funded by industry to do their research. And unfortunately, that research is now into weapons and the military primarily, and it's applied practical research as opposed to basic research, which used to be under the NRC, National Research Council. So my feeling is that we should be supporting the students at the various universities, and in particular, asking the universities to divest of 24 companies that make nuclear weapons and make conventional weapons. So those are the Northrop Grummons, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeing, RTX, which used to be Raytheon, BAE over in England. These 24 countries would be very easy to take off from endowments, university endowments. I've seen some figures. McGill has $500,000 invested in Lockheed Martin. And out of over $1 billion endowment, that is relatively small and therefore would not make a big difference to their overall earnings, and yet would certainly send a strong message that universities now would not be investing in companies that are invested in killing people. So that's a very specific thing that I think we should be doing. And looking around the screen, I would estimate that we're all alumni.
Richard, I want to ask you one. Are any of these encampments that are taking place, I think those are the real protests going on now, do any of those address the issues that you just posed? I thought all of them were about Gaza and that issue. Am I wrong?
Well, no, you're not wrong. But I think this is an opportunity for us as alumni to tell our universities administration to divest of companies that are in the business of killing other people. And so to me, it's an opportunity to broaden the issue in one sense, but also narrow the issue in another sense. You're right, Meta. The encampments are about divestment from companies in Israel. And that becomes very difficult because it's sort of an entangled web as to where you draw the line as to how much involvement a company is involved in Israel. And I think the thing is also, as I've got here in my background, we want to end war, period, as opposed to just the killing that's going on and the destruction that's going on in Gaza. I mean, terrible things are happening in Sudan, in Yemen, the Congo, etc. And so we need to address all of these.
Richard, but I don't want to argue against what you're saying, but in fact, I mostly support it. But the mixing, it'd be very unpromising as a place and time right now to get the students who are exercised about the Gaza thing, or even the people who are exercised about Ukraine, to come out against manufacturing weapons, because half of the people in the peace movement, and I'm guessing at half. The point is, I've never seen a poll, and I'd be really interested in seeing a poll as to the opinions of peace workers around the world. But I think probably half of them are saying, let's have more weapons quickly and get them to Ukraine, just as we're saying, they're saying, let's cut off the shipments of weapons to Israel. So this is not a good time to try to promote disarmament if you're really thinking in terms of practical likelihood of success. And maybe I'm wrong.
Well, there was a poll a couple of years ago done by Naxos that found that 80% of people want to get rid of nuclear weapons, and only 9% were in favor of keeping nuclear weapons as a deterrent. So I think that this is an opportune time. The students are talking about divestment, and
are they? I mean, the same students who are talking about the Gaza situation, they're talking also about divestment? Okay.
Well, that's their whole idea, is that we divest from companies that are supporting Israel or working in Israel.
Okay, but they're not talking about divestment from military manufacturing, right?
Well, I think that they want to stop the war, and so therefore, yes, they want to stop Canada from sending arms and other countries from sending arms to Israel.
The same people, a lot of them are saying, let's hurry up and send more weapons to Ukraine. And I actually, I understand that point of view. I really do. I can't speak against that, frankly.
Well, you're absolutely right, Meta, that we have people supporting sending weapons to Ukraine. and opposing the horror show in Gaza by trying to cut off weapons supply. But what got lost in all this for the last couple of years is the absolute stupidity of war in the first place. No matter who starts it, how it begins, you don't immediately jump to "we've got to win." The idea is to stop the war and how to do that, and that is now playing out possibly in Ukraine. When you commit yourself to, well, we've got to win and we've got to supply weapons, thousands of people die. And what if it doesn't come out your way? I see a very real possibility that this "we've got to win" is not going to work out. The Russians may win. And where are we then when we did not devote all of our efforts to trying to stop the war, not
I mean, that's one point of view. There are really serious, honest to goodness, devoted people wanting peace who do not take that point of view. Barbara, I would love to hear your thoughts since you're from Ukraine. Can you?
Well, Patrick had his hand up first, but if you let me respond to
I'm sorry,
Patrick.
Okay, sorry.
No, I'm happy to respond, but Patrick was in line.
Barbara, go ahead. Since we're on the topic of Ukraine, please go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah.
All right, Dakayo. I call myself a peaceivist now. A peaceivist. And that came as a result of being in this country that has been my third country and the one that I feel my soul most connected to, although I love Canada with my whole self. But there's a bigger self of me that loves Ukraine and has since 1980 for some reason. And I abhor, or I used to abhor, war. And now I understand that war is the natural outcome of all the little battles we each all have all around the planet for time immemorial, and that it's encoded into our language and our cellular memory and our belief systems and all of that. And that we won't have peace because we don't understand peace. We don't know what peace is. And we haven't learned to integrate it into how we see the world and how we treat our children or our dogs or our neighbors or the environment or anything. And yet we want it, and we all want it, and it is the one unifying thing in the whole humanitarian realm. And yet we're all busy saying we need to have it, and we can't do it like that, or we must do it like that. And we are not learning the basic tenets of what peace is. And God knows I am not an expert. I'm just following my nose. I'm following my heart. And so I have a long history of working against war until I realized that working against anything empowers it. And so I started shifting from what I was against to standing for what I was for. And I left the peace movement because we were all against things and there was very few people for things. And so I started thinking and working internally and quietly because I didn't have any language for what was being asked of me. And what I understand now from being in Ukraine, I mean, I arrived on 9/11. That's the day I arrived. And that told me that my life was about that. And as a consultant, almost all the time I was entering a war zone, a danger zone in the companies. So I know that my life is about being there to discover something, not to fix it, not to tell them who's wrong and not to tell them how to do it, but to discover how to be it, And it seems so futile sometimes. It took me the past 2 years to be able to hear a certain voice that's prominent and has been mentioned today, to be able to hear it without feeling hatred. I had to rid myself of that hatred, that fear, that resistance that I had to the things that I considered wrong. And so once I started on that path, I felt like the abundance of the universe started being poured into me to show me that I was in the right direction, even though I had no idea where it was going or how to do it or anything. And you know, I feel really foolish. And my son would say, "What are you still doing that for? You're not getting paid. You're working 24 hours a day. What are you doing it for?" I said,
Barbara, can I ask you what policy you would take, or do you feel is the corollary of your point of view?
yes, I'm getting there.
You're getting there, go on.
I'm getting there. Thank you, Meta. And I'm like you. I could wander down several side streets because it's the most fascinating thing that I know is just to explore what is peace and how do we understand it. I want to just survey people and find out what do we believe about peace. And anyways, there's a lot there. But what I have come to as a peaceivist, which I became a year ago, as opposed to a political activist, which I have marched and stormed and done all sorts of things against. I'm looking for how do we do it for peace in the middle of a war. And so what I've discovered is that our students who are terrorized and tortured and distraught, and our teachers in Ukraine, in the midst of this, in the bomb shelters and the sirens all day long, it's a relentless thing, and everyone has lost people, and it's horrific. And yet, in the middle of all of this, these students can learn to take that peace first breath and just catch that moment when, at the first sign of distress.
Barbara, how are we going to get peace in?
Just bear with me 1 second. You have to take that breath in order to get there. So in the middle of the crisis, unless the dragon is on your tail, you step back on the sidewalk out of your opinions that are charging around in the road, and you breathe, just one breath. And then you remember who you are. And the students from 6 years old to 26, they learn that when the moment they choose that breath, they are able to access their wisdom again because of all the biological things that happen when you breathe. And when they access their wisdom, they realize that they have a choice.
Barbara, can a person who's taken that breath go on and fight?
Yes, I can. Here's how I'd explain it. If somebody comes to my door,
is there any necessary and logical, inevitable conclusion from your description of your spiritual development to the position that I will not kill anybody under any circumstances? I don't think that's true.
I can't say that, and that's where I'm going. So I have this deep devotion to the world of possibility where we all learn to get along and where we solve the problems together, and competition is against cancer or global warming, not each other. But if someone comes to my door and smashes it down and says, "We're moving into the kitchen and the bathroom, and by the way, your daughter lives with us now," I am not going to say, "Oh, okay, well, I'm a peaceivist, then go ahead." I'm going to take everything I have to get them out of my house, whatever it takes. And that's where everybody in Ukraine is. That's where they are. They are peaceful people. They've been occupied for thousands of years. Do you think they want another occupier? No. But they are tired of defending and killing. But you have someone there who doesn't give a rat's ass about who you are or who does anything except them. And you can't trust any kind of negotiated peace with the people that are at play right now against Ukraine. You can't trust them. And so the only thing is to defend yourself.
That's clear enough. Thank you for that. Patrick, you had your hand up, and then I think Richard either wants the floor again or hasn't taken his hand down. Okay, Patrick.
Well, thank you so much. I do agree with Richard. He wrote something about there's no side that wins war except the armament company. When I told my girls, they're 20 and 24, I said, they say, well, Dad, sometimes I just don't understand. I said, well, when we don't understand something, there are only three things in life that matters. One is we follow the money. The second is we follow where the power is going. And the third thing is sex. Only three things in life actually cause men and women to do something that we don't understand. And in this case, some people are actually saying that Russia is in the right, and some people are saying Ukraine is in the right, and so on. The invisible hand in this case, got us by our whatever. And they want us to fight over this. The main cause is really about the money. It's the armament company making all the money. They want war, doesn't matter who wins and lose. They are in the perpetual game of making money. And that's the root cause. Now, unfortunately, when we talk about peace, we want to say, oh, stop war and so on. We are fighting the fire. We don't get to the root cause. The root cause, my surprise, is indifference. Most voters are indifferent. They vote for people who look the best, who's the most charismatic and so on. We don't vote for substance. And so what is the root cause? This root cause is like what Barbara said, is education, is what Richard was saying, is education. We need to teach civil lessons to people so that they will be more aware of something like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who else wants to speak now?
Can I say something?
Yeah?
Can I say something?
Yes,
Oh,
Lita.
is it my turn? Oh, regarding education. I think you may have heard about proportional representation, the movement in Canada. And the purpose of this is to, if at the end, say the votes in, say in Canada, are suppose the Green Party gets, or say the NDP gets 18% of the popular vote, to have 18% of the voice in Parliament also. So same thing with the Green Party. I mean, the Green Party has only 2 or 3 MPs at the most, although it may be getting 7% of the popular vote. So in the US, it's an extreme of the non-proportional. That is, it's black or white, because you vote directly for the president, and whoever loses, quote unquote, I mean, the difference may be 48 and 52. The differences may be very small, but at the end, the one that gets the 48 goes home, is not in opposition to the president. And this, the result of that, the lack of proportionality, makes it that there are only 2 parties, and because both of them, they fish for the same kind of voters, the differences are going to be very small. At the end, there may be green people, let's say, in the US, there may be women's movements, maybe all of that, but there is no party represented in the 2 parliaments about the green issues, for example. In Canada, okay, we have linguist people, we have the language minorities, I mean the French, for example. We have a Green Party, and we have the NDP, all of that represented right in the parliament. If something is not in the parliament, the press is not going to be interested. And then people either, they lose interest in voting. The figure makes no difference anyway. Why bother waiting in line and all of that? Either the one or the other. And so what I mean by that is that I do not think the American people are so, inherently dumb or indifferent, but it is their system that makes them that way. This extreme non-proportionality.
Okay, very good point of view. Richard?
Thank you again, Meta.
Mhm.
I fully agree with Patrick Chun there, what he was saying. I go back to education, and as you can see from my background, there's a course that I put in the chat on Ending War 101, which gives you the link. And to Barbara, I would say that in Ukraine, it's unfortunate that we got into this situation. It could have been prevented. There was peace overtures at the beginning, which unfortunately were scuttled by Boris Johnson and others. Now, you can use nonviolence to oppose an oppressor. You can, quote, the Indians in India worked to rule and followed all the rules that the British put in, and the whole system came to a collapse. And during the war, the Second World War, people made bullets that were just a little bit larger than the barrels of the guns that were shooting them, and so they would always jam. So you can do things like that. I agree with you, and I like your term, peacifist, as opposed to a pacifist, but I think it's an interesting term. I think that I'm taking another course called Peace on Earth by 2030, which looks at education of peace within our own hearts. And if we can become more peaceful within, then hopefully we can spread that to other people and spread it to the world, and hopefully create a much more peaceful world. And so that is my vision. I believe that, again, as a doctor, I've seen behaviors change over the last 50 odd years. The majority of people have stopped smoking. They now wear helmets, they wear seat belts. And so people's behaviors can change. And I don't believe that we are necessarily a violent species that's going to end up in self-destruction. That's a possibility, but hopefully not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, very good. So now I think next was John German have? I keep seeing that hand, but now I don't see it. Charles Tauber, and you have your hand, and then I'll go back to Bill Geimer, I think.
Yeah, I have other things to talk about, but to get into this discussion, one of the, I think, big issues in the causes of war is the traumatization, and I think you see that quite clearly in Gaza and the Israeli-Palestinian thing. That both sides have been traumatized, and I know I say this at every one of these meetings, but that trauma is transmitted. It is not resolved. It then leads to resentment and more violence and more traumatization. And this is a cycle that continues. And I think that this is quite clear in the Middle East. It's certainly clear here in the Balkans as well. And people like Vomik Volkan, whom you've had, Meta, on your programs, talk about, and other people talk about exactly this kind of a cycle. So it's extremely important. And that's what's going on also in Ukraine. And until we deal with those traumas, then nothing's going to happen. Then it will go on and on and on. So.
Thank you. All right, Bill, back to you.
Thank you. But I want to say that I very much admire Barb's work, especially because of my involvement in peace education as well. But I have to directly oppose one opinion, and I've heard it many times. in my respectful submission, anti-war is a perfectly good guiding term. Peace is far more than the absence of violence and the absence of war. And I think certainly everyone at this meeting knows and understands that. But you begin with the first step out of the cave, and that is that you do not do physical violence to one another. My spiritual community, which it means a lot to me, in that community, we believe, we accept, we have no dogma or doctrines, but what brings us together is the belief of our oneness with God, not just the Christian God. Many paths, one God is one of the things that we accept, and with one another, that the three, all other people, ourselves and God, are one in love. Now, if you accept that, then you simply cannot, under any circumstances, kill or do violence to those that you love. Now, Barbara raised also a very common extreme example of somebody breaking into the house. The immediate, and I won't go into why this is the one area that I have expertise in, but I do, it's self-defense. The one area where violence has been internationally accepted is immediate need to protect oneself against death or great bodily harm. Otherwise, there is no justification for violence. And that immediate kind of example is something we are so far from that it's mind-boggling. So to be anti-war, you come out and say, I can't kill those with whom I am one. So what do? I have to work not to have a war start. If it does start, I have to work to find a way to stop it. I have to non-violently resist, as people have said. I have to find ways to non-violently resist, but I simply cannot commit myself to winning in the terms of killing more people, taking more territory, getting more resources, because I'm playing into the game that I want to, that it simply can't be done. And with great respect, when you say we can't trust these people to negotiate peace, there are many, many examples, thank goodness, where that position has proven to be false.
Thank you. Okay, and let's see, Barbara.
Wow, this is a wonderful conversation. I had no idea what this meeting was about, except I trusted the guidance of John to get here. Bill, everything you say, I totally understand. And there's no black and white answers in this realm anymore. And there's, to be a purist as a pacifist no longer works for me because of the complexities of even just the way wars are fought. But the bigger issue, we're not going to solve it today. The bigger issue is, can we learn to allow each other our thoughts? Can we learn to listen to each other? Can we care about people who have really strongly difference of opinions and still be willing to dialogue and discourse? And do we understand what peace really means? I have a spiritual tradition. In fact, I'm also an ordained minister in it for 25 years. That is an all roads lead home kind of tradition. But the foundation of peace I think of as our operating system. I think it is encoded in us. I think that it is our compass. It is our guide. And you can make that what you may. It's very murky in the realm of defense. And then there is the issue of sovereignty and how those things get happened and who's broken the laws in the past, and including the US and including Ukraine and including Russia. And, it's all very murky. And I believe in miracles, and I believe that miracles are the way life really wants to work. So I don't believe in killing. I don't.
Okay. I understand. Here you go. I think Patrick Chun and then we have devoted the first hour now to this issue of pacifism, I think. That's the way I would summarize it with one word. And I think we have other people here who have different issues. And I think we ought to, after Patrick, move on to some other people. I see that Franz Weste is here and Brian von Herzen has joined us. Peter Wadhams was with us, but I don't see him anymore. And I don't, Mike Nicholson, I can't quite predict what you want to talk about. But some of these other people I know want to talk about global warming issues. So and
I'm going to thank you, Mena, and bless all of you, and leave. And I've enjoyed breaking my rule today, and blessings on every one of you.
Good wishes for your better health. You're looking thinner, frankly. I don't know.
About 30 pounds thinner, but maybe that's not a bad thing.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if I weighed 30 pounds less, I would call it a good thing, but in your case, I'm not sure. Anyway, wow. Good wishes and bless you. Now, let's go to Patrick Chun, and then I'm going to invite somebody who wants to talk about something else. Okay, Patrick?
Yeah, thank you so much. There are two things. First thing is I actually have heard people from some wise people from the United Nations, which we belong to, saying that we should set up neutral buffer zones between conflicting geographic areas and so on. They have actually done some of it, I think, in the ocean where there are disputes between two countries, and they set that area of the ocean to be neutral. And that is where they can actually have replenishing the fish stocks and so on. It actually grew out to a level where both nations benefit when it was neutral, because it gives the area it was overfished and all that to actually grow. The second thing is the organization where I volunteer, they are working with United Nations to work on tourists. So in places like where we mentioned before, Venice, for example, they're seeing over tourism, and people from wherever, from Brazil or America going to Venice, and they were being loud and so on, unruly tourists, ill-mannered, and they're saying that they should be educated before they actually allowed in. So my group is actually working with United Nations and some destination to say that they should have the education and earn points, so that they can show those points to the local authorities for preferential entrance admission. Those are the kind of things that are being talked about. And so they're using tourism for peace. Thank you.
Wow.
That's interesting. It's a novel approach. Now, I don't see any hands. Having declared that I want to open the floor to somebody who wants to change the subject, I don't see anybody who wants to change the subject. In fact, I don't see anybody anywhere. I might have to call on somebody. Here's Lita. Okay. Oh, Charles also. I see Charles. Actually, as soon as Lita, then we'll charge. Charles.
Yeah.
Lita.
Yeah, I put in the chat. The big problem is when we say self-defense. I mean, Israel is claiming self-defense now.
Yeah.
So it's not a clear-cut thing. What self-defense is at all. And this is exactly the big issue. And
Yes.
of course, Israel claims self-defense, although I mean, I did not know, but I just found out that in the Netanyahu's party, named Likud, which is a far-right party, from what I heard, anyway, it says among the part of the constitution is to make Israel from the river to the sea, that is, kick out all of the Palestinians. And that's not a secret, they say it openly. So how would they expect ever the Palestinians, several million people, to just stand still and accept it? As you said, they come in to your house. Even worse, they don't just take your food, they kill you too, because they want you out. So this is the thing. Who is defending themselves, you see? And this is exactly the thing that is the complex issue.
Right.
Who is the Hamas? The one who killed 35,000 or the one who killed 1,500? Even if you say that all of the hostages are killed, even if, which is not the case. Okay. So who is the biggest terrorist? See, years ago, the United Nations, they wanted, at the times of the Al-Fatah, of Arafat and all of that, they wanted to decide to name officially that this organization is a terrorist organization. They could never agree, of course, because of Palestine.
Okay, all very interesting points, and I don't see any hands. I would like to speak a little bit first to, oh yes, Charles. Charles, and then I want to ask Ashok Malik to tell us a little bit about what's happening in the in India. Charles.
Let him go first, and I see that Alexei has just come, so maybe he wants to speak.
Yet. Oh, here he is. He just popped up. Hello, Alexei. Nice
and then okay. Just don't forget me.
Don't you want to go ahead, Charles, and then we'll get around. Charles, speak.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think the point that I was making a little earlier of trauma as a root cause of these things, and I know I say this at virtually every one of these meetings, but nobody really is dealing with these traumas on a long-term basis. We're dealing with them. We're working with people in Africa. We will start to work with some Ukrainians through various organizations. We're working with a group that I think Alexa would be very interested in, namely some conscientious objectors and even Russian deserters. And the point is that everybody is traumatized. And of course, these traumas bring up all kinds of resentments, all kinds of depression, all kinds of violence, and it leads to domestic violence, it leads to societal violence, it leads to a cycle of violence, and that's what's causing Israel-Gaza right now, and that's what's causing all the Balkan stuff, which nobody is talking about. In terms of migrants, we are absolutely everybody is absolutely abusing migrants everywhere in the world. It's certainly that's true here in Europe. And it's true also in Africa. We have a friend in South Africa, a psychiatrist, who is working with migrants to South Africa. We have one group in Malawi that is working with migrants from various other countries, also in Uganda. So, and nobody is supporting these groups either. So the point is that we must spend more attention. And by the way, just for your information, we're running out of money, so I don't know how long we will be able to exist, but we will try as long as we can. And we're trying to find Quaker money and all kinds of other money. But Alexei, at some point, you and I should get together because there's a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of Ukraine and in terms of all kinds of places, among them, for example, Georgia. There's a lot of stuff going on in Georgia right now. And it's all over. Our groups in Nigeria, our groups in as I say, Malawi and other places, it's almost universal, and we're getting more and more requests. And unless we solve this, the world is going to continue to go to war. Okay, that's me.
Thank you, Charles. Ashok, tell us a little bit about what's
Yes,
happening in India.
yes, of course. As you know, that Kashmir that served as a battleground for India and Pakistan for the last 75 years. That is a stark reality. But now the things are improving, and elections are going on, and people they are taking part in the elections. Democracy is restoring, and what we are working as a peace worker, instead of going for a different or separate nation, they must live with the we can say bigger nation and stable nation. So of course the people have the two choices: go with the Pakistan or stay with the India. So it is better to stay with India because this is the very much stable land. So we are doing this to change the mindset of the people to think India as their own nation. And so of course, success is there, but still it needs a lot of, we can say, things to do to reach heart and mind of the people. So this is something that is going on in Kashmir, and things are improving. There is very, very less violence, and no killings are there, no stone pelting is there. A lot of things have been improved on ground.
What do you expect will happen if Modi is reelected?
Yes, of course. There was a sort of, we can say, I mean, misunderstanding between the two communities, and there is, of course, we can say, extreme, we can say, ideology is there. And in some parts, we can say it is a negative piece that is existing. But now we can say the understanding is there. The people, there are the two extremes. They are understanding one another to live peacefully with the spirit of the coexistence. So the things are improving, and now, of course, the two extremes. For example, there are two communities, Hindus and Muslims. They started to integrate with one another. So that's a good sign. But still, we can say many people they
Excuse me,
think that
just a sec. Who's integrating with whom? I'm a little lost about what groups we're talking about now.
of course there are two groups, two ideologies are there, and there are two extremes. But now they are thinking, and the people they are joining one another, of course. So but it still is, it's a beginning, and there is need for the more work to we can say reduce the misunderstanding between the two communities. Yeah, but in some parts it is a positive piece, in other parts it's a negative piece.
Sorry, you're talking about the two communities in Kashmir.
Of course, I mean, so between India and Kashmir, yeah, we can say, yeah, of course.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Good wishes for the, I don't know what will come of this election, but I hope everybody comes out better than we were to begin with. Yes, Patrick, briefly. Yes, Patrick.
With answering to Akish comment about integrating, just to let you know, in history, in Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, the founding founder of Singapore, mandated that in Singapore there's no segregation, voluntary segregation. They in a building, they have to have saying that you can only have 20% Chinese, 20% wherever else. So if you can't break that quota, and so there are no ethnic district that are slums or Italians or Chinese or Indian and so on, everybody would have neighbors who are somebody who's from a different ethnic background. And so they solved that issue, I think 40 years ago. And look at where Singapore is right now. They used to have a lower GDP than Malaysia, but now Malaysia has a much lower GDP than Singapore, because Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew was saying that social fabric is our wealth. And so that's why there's groups out there that are saying that we want to mend social fabric, and that is by the inner self, about greeting people, saying hi, being polite, and so on. So it may turn out that it is the social etiquette that is going to save the world.
Well, that's
Yeah.
an interesting point of view. I must say, Singapore is a stunning place. John German, and then I want to go to greet Alexei. John German.
Yes,
John?
thank you. Patrick, that's a brilliant statement, that social fabric is our wealth. And that is a fundamental basis of the Peace on Earth by 2030 game, which I posted about in the chat. What I wanted to say, Patrick, when you spoke earlier about having a kind of a license for tourism, is that that's not an isolated thing. That's in a long tradition of take just one fairly recent example, the internet driving license. It was proposed during the rise of the internet that there be a kind of license that you could take an examination for. You get training for it, and you take an examination just like you do for a driver's license for a car, or a truck, or a bicycle, or a motorcycle. And that is an idea that has existed in many different realms. I'd like to throw out another realm for that idea to be implemented in, and that is an elections license. In order to vote in an election, what if you had to take an examination that said that you were somewhat aware of what the issues were, you were somewhat aware of what the facts were, and maybe some other things? What if there were such a thing? Or what if there was something that made a distinction between a voter who had no election license and a voter who did, so that the voter who had an election license would have more influence than the voter who didn't? This is also in the spirit of something else in government, which is the idea in the U.S. of two houses, the Senate and the House. So that you can say, well, those who have the elections license, they can have a say over the following kinds of policies, but those who don't have an election license, they can't. I'm throwing it out there. I think it's probably going to be very provocative, because it could be a measure of repression if it's used badly, or if it's used effectively for people who have bad ideas in mind. But I can also see it as something that could be an instrument for good, which is, to sum up, the story of the tools of humanity, that they can all be used for good or ill. So I'd like to throw this one out and say, why don't we grab onto this one and try to get it used for good before somebody with evil intent grabs onto it and uses it for their goals. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Look, I said that I wanted to change the subject, but all of the people who, here's Franz still with me, but Brian came and went, looks like. Anyway, I want somebody to brace yourself, because I'm going to point at you and say, let's talk about global warming in a bit, because I know Franz is an absolute one of the greatest minds going on in this area of research now. So I want to take my hat off to Franz Wesley, who's a chemist and knows all about these things, the global warming issues. But in the meantime, I want to talk to Alexei. And did I see somebody else's hand popped up briefly? But Alexei, greetings. I haven't seen you.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
Alexei's in Warsaw. Are you in Warsaw now?
Yes, I am still in Warsaw, and it will all depend on whether or not I will get the refugee status, which I'm waiting on.
What do you think? What are the odds?
The chances are good, because Poland, unlike other European countries, Poland is very welcoming in terms of dissidents, opposition activists, and so the chances are good that they will give me a residence permit for 3 years and a refugee passport, even something like a Nansen's passport of yore.
Wonderful.
That used to be issued to people who lost their citizenship sometimes due to the dissolution of their former country as a state.
I think we ought to have Nansen's passports again, frankly. I think that's a big issue that we ought to take up, and a cause that I would be happy to support. But go ahead.
So they have like I guess they're called Great passports or Geneva passports as a reference to the Geneva Convention, and so this is the problem is that not all countries, at least on the level of customs officers and border control officers, recognize those passports. Sometimes, like if you see a passport of a well-known country, it doesn't really raise any questions. Maybe it's not the case with less known countries, but the refugee's passport always. In many cases, it's not recognized. It's just that at least you can have problems while entering a certain country.
I want to mention, by the way, that Konstantin Samoilov and I are going to do another forum sometime. I actually, to be honest, I forgot. I mean, I think I stood him up when he was ready to go on a forum, and I'm so humiliated that I'm ashamed to tell you, but I have to, confess. Anyway, he has found somebody that he wants to bring into the conversation. And it's a guy who is full-time working on helping Russians to immigrate to other countries. So this guy, Roman somebody, knows a lot about the situation of Russian emigres. And I'd like for you to, of course, you can mention that, but I'm very curious to hear what you think about the situation in Russia, in your home country, and especially I'm hearing now that there's almost a purge of military officials. What do you know about that, if anything, and how important is it?
Well, some of the big shots, the military big shots, have been arrested. Some of them have been removed from offices. So there's something definitely going on, and it all started with even before the former defense minister was removed from office. His deputy was very corrupt, and he was ostentatiously corrupt. He was just glamorously corrupt. Everyone takes bribes at that level, almost everyone. I wouldn't say 100%, but I think the system would not tolerate someone who is clean in that respect. But that guy was famously, he was just, there were movies about his fortunes. It was just not realistic. He was just in charge of procurement in the army, and so he was put under arrest, and that's where he currently is. And then some military generals not related to procurement followed under a new minister of defense. Since Putin's inauguration, he was re-elected, quote unquote, which was of course a sham election, but anyway, it was presented in that way. He appointed a new minister of defense, and the new minister, probably it shows his intent to wage a war indefinitely, and for that end he needs to have some big resources, and that's why he's trying maybe to eradicate some very some outstanding cases of corruption in the army. I think he has to.
Okay.
And I hope I
So
only
it doesn't necessarily mean a change of direction in his attitude toward ending the war. It doesn't mean anything that way. Is that right?
I guess he's just he is maybe he's running out of money. At least the money is drying out, and probably he understands that the war will be lengthy anyway. At least so he reckons. So he plans or admits, and well, and he needs to curtail corruption in a certain way. And that's how
he's the most corrupt of them all.
Yeah, but he somehow wants to send a signal. Maybe it's time to. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I think he himself, Putin has stolen more money than anybody else in history, probably.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's got the whole country in his pocket. That's because all the oligarchs' money, it's all his money in effect.
Right.
Because anyway, if he wants to, every one of the oligarchs, they don't want to go to prison. They will just right away give him their companies, their bank accounts, all their belongings wherever they are.
Yeah.
But he obviously wants to continue the war. Although recently this week there were indications that he is ready to negotiate.
Really?
Yeah. There were. Officially, there were leaks about that, but I guess all those leaks are more or less manageable or controllable. Leaks that he's ready to negotiate, but on his terms.
Sure.
On his terms. He wants to keep the east of Ukraine in his possession. Something that he has taken by force.
But he would have negotiated that all along, you know. Anytime they want to give him Eastern Ukraine and the Donbass, he would have taken it and said thank you, and we'll stop fighting now.
But at the same time, if the West, he's a bit disappointed that the West or Ukraine, first and foremost, that Ukraine is not accepting these conditions. And if they don't accept this status quo, he's ready to wage a war indefinitely, at least for some years to come. And that's why he's probably looking for sources of money, of resources for doing so indefinitely. That's probably the idea.
I fear for Ukraine now. I think it doesn't look good. It's going to take so long to get any kind of support that will turn the tide. That I'm more worried.
That's right, but now we've got $61 billion American support. I guess, and this is starting to arrive to the front line, and I guess this might change the tide a little bit towards on the Ukrainian side. Ukraine is being very smart in slowly retreating in a controllable way. They just grind down the Russian forces, and that's Putin's forces, and so they are. That's the smart way to do this. That's the best way they can probably handle the situation, while they don't have the resources yet.
Mm-hmm.
But they will have them by I think by June or July.
All right. So you're more optimistic than I am. Okay, good for you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again, and I hope we're keeping our fingers crossed for you.
I'm happy to see you.
And Rose Dyson is here and wants to speak. Hello, Rose.
Hello, Meta, and everyone else. Well, I certainly enjoyed the discussion thus far, and I know you wanted to put the definitions of being a peace activist aside for the first hour. I have to say that I'm among, having been a peace activist in a number of different ways over the years, do have difficulty with the notion that one would only exhibit aggression if one was personally attacked. I believe that there are certain principles involved that have to be defended as well in life living in the pursuit of happiness. But I also agree with a comment that was made earlier, I think by Patrick, that our social fabric is one of our most important components in facilitating peace and coexistence amongst ourselves. And it is, I suppose, no secret to anyone here that the social contract in Western democracies is very frayed and in difficulty right now. And that, of course, is attributed to a number of factors, the media issues, social media, disappearing local papers, cult figures emerging, foreign interference as a result of digital technology has made these things possible, and so on. But because, like many of you, I think, probably, and certainly people I'm with right now, I'm very concerned about what happens in the upcoming American election. I happen to be in New York, or was in New York 2 days ago, for my grandson's graduation, and somebody raised the importance of an election election certificate, I think it was called, or something of that sort, or I guess legislation that would require voting, as they have in Australia. And I've certainly heard a great deal about the need for more emphasis on civic education at the high school level before young people leave. It was encouraging at this particular graduation exercise in New York to hear a learning specialist emphasize to all the graduates that they must vote. And there was, of course, a great deal of applause in the room that followed. And soon after, I picked up in my email box a message from people who are working on the part of the Democrats. Evidently, Gen Z people are being offered something like $35 for X number of people they can get of their generation to register. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to try to better engage a generation that the polls are telling us are tuning out of active engagement in the upcoming election. Anyway, that's all I have to say for the moment.
Thank you. John German.
A question for Alexei. With the recent news about Russia and atomic weapons and preparation for use of atomic weapons, preparation for testing, preparation for exercises, specifically aimed at being ready to use atomic weapons. One of the new things that I'm wondering about is, are you hearing anything about prospective use of atomic weapons, to take out satellites? This is atomic weapons used in space, not on the surface of the Earth, which I think has been an interesting development, partially because it causes, it kind of throws a monkey wrench into the arguments about use of atomic weapons because of their effect directly on people. And those doesn't kill directly; it gets later due to fallout and so forth. And so, as soon as you start considering atomic weapons in space, say, well, wait a minute, does it have any of those effects? And if so, what happens to the idea that we should resist the use of atomic weapons? So I'm wondering whether you're hearing anything about prospective use of atomic weapons to take out satellites, because there are recent studies that have been published in front page news in major media, in the traditional media in the United States, saying that the targets would be things like Skylink, which is the basis for a lot of the intelligence for defense of Ukraine. And so it would seem like a very inviting target from several points of view. There's we're in Russia, managing things. So it's well, let's go take that out, and that'll cripple them in their efforts to resist us. And at the same time, it undercuts all the work of all those people who would like to get rid of nukes, because they can't prove that it's going to have any effects on the ground, other than the fact that it makes Ukraine's defenses crumble. So, are you hearing anything?
I guess there's been a lot of talks about nuclear weapons, which in the Russian doctrine are subdivided into tactical weapons, that is weaker weapons, and strategic, stronger ones. I think both, but if we, in terms of both categories, which I think do not exist in the Western doctrine, at least for what I know, there's no subdivision, and at least even in Russia, there is no clear line between the two categories. I think if we talk about either of them, we need to take all those threats with a considerable pinch of salt, because there is, I guess, if they were to be used at any time in the war, it was probably we were the closest to that in 2022 when the war began. It seemed like a possible outcome, very sadly, but now. We haven't seen that happen, and I think one biggest deterrent would be the obvious opposition of China to any use of nuclear weapons of whatever size, whatever kind, and we see that the Chinese openly condemn. I mean, the People's Republic of China, Comrade Xi Jinping, he condemns the use of nuclear weapons, and well, of course, this is politics, and you never know how sincere he is in this. Maybe he's playing a more delicate, a more intricate game. We don't know. But it's in no one's interest to let that happen, and Putin is so deeply dependent on China, on anything, starting from banking, starting from consumer goods, because Russia does not really produce enough goods to cover its own needs. That it will never say or do anything which would be contrary to Chinese interests. It's like a semi-colony of China, and and I think India has a similar stance, similar approach. And those two giants, if they, Putin's government has to rely on those two sources, those two countries as sources of everything, as just the window into the world. If those countries don't want nuclear weapons to be used, Putin will never use them, let alone his own family, because each instance of using nuclear weapons is a one-way street. There's no way back. And I think we're not going to see this happen.
Well, good for
Okay,
you.
good.
And you have this.
Good.
Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but
Just one other observation there, and that is that when the news hit the front page of the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and so forth, about this study that said Russia is getting very serious about using nuclear weapons in space to take out satellites, communication satellites, what they focused on was the effect it would have on the defense of Ukraine. But what I immediately thought of, and I have a reason why, is that it's a way to destroy the ability of the United States and other countries to conduct any business. And here's the reason we know about this. Some years back, there was a failure on one transponder of one satellite in space. And as a result, all over the United States and other places could not conduct credit card transactions. They couldn't get their ATMs to work at their banks. and there were radio transmissions that were interrupted. There were all sorts of things that happened that people had no idea involved the use of communications with satellites in space. And so that was in peacetime. There were no other emergencies going on at the time. It was a technical problem. Just imagine what that would cause if Russia were to decide, it may be Armageddon, but we're going to destroy the ability of the United States to conduct any business. Everybody's life is going to be on hold. They'll be reduced to paper. They won't be able to access their bank accounts. They won't be able to do anything electronic, and they won't be able to get any information either. So let's push the button. That's my thought.
But
Okay,
again,
now we have a confrontation. That's
sorry.
very. Go ahead, Alexei, and this debate should go on. But I have to say, I really do want these two extraordinary people who are experts on global warming or climate change issues. I want one of you or both of you to speak. Franz or Brian, I'm going to call on you and point at you in a bit if you don't put your hand up. But in the meantime, go ahead and answer him, Alexei. And I think there was one other hand up. Maybe, anyway, go ahead, Alexei.
I just wanted to make a quick observation, just not to take anyone's time. I did just to add some optimism, which sometimes escapes me recently. But now I would like to add some optimism still. Any such action, any disruption to the global satellite network will also shoot back at Putin himself. So he's a coward, really. He's not like a religious fanatic or something. So he just he knows he or at least the people around him, they don't want to get shot back. So I guess any such action will entail retaliation immediately. So there's I guess it looks to me it looks more like a bluff. And here is I wouldn't like to be mistaken here. I love to be mistaken, but not in this case. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now I'm going to point at Brian von Hertzen and say, I want you to speak, please.
Oh, thank you. And can you hear my audio okay?
Yeah, but it would be nice to see your face too, if we can do that.
It's 5 in the morning here.
Right,
It's still dark.
Yeah.
So first of all, my comment is that Putin lies most of the time. And what that means is, first of all, there's a lot of communications that take place on fiber optics. And so those are not, subject to the same kind of disruptions. Secondly, there's over 1,000 Starlink satellites that make it somewhat difficult with this expanding constellation to actually take out all the satellites. There just aren't that many space-focused nuclear weapons at the moment. So there are a bunch of reasons that you can count on Putin lying most of the time. So when you hear him say something, you just think about, okay, why is he saying this? And, mostly it's to get maximum mileage out of his nuclear threat, because if he's threatening nuclear, it's probably because he's going to focus on something else. So I'll just offer that as that when Putin says things like this, his main goal is to put fear into Westerners that they have to be really careful. And I think that the reality is our planet should not and cannot tolerate bullies anymore. We cannot afford the luxury of dictators and totalitarianism. We need to fight for fair democracies and representations and self-determination. So I'll just offer that. I think I
want you to offer something about your work. You are doing wonderful global warming work, and we haven't even mentioned that, which I think, frankly, of the two issues facing humankind now, war or global warming, and I think global warming is more dangerous. I just think that. Now you're doing superb work, and Franz is also doing magnificent work, and you need to talk about it.
Very well. Happy to do so. Well, for our civilization to survive, we need to have food security on land and food security in the sea. In the past decade, we have worked on biochar and compost and microbial communities that can help to ensure and regenerate productive land areas that are otherwise in depleted soils. And in the sea, we focus on the 90% of all global warming that is going into the sea at present and how it's affecting the upper layers of the ocean. To that end, we've identified the Permian mass extinction, which 250 million years ago resulted from an increase in greenhouse gases, caused a warming of the ocean. It caused a decrease in the nutrient supply, which decreased the supply of primary production in the ocean, which supplies oxygen as well as carbohydrates. And unfortunately, that deoxygenated the ocean 250 million years ago, and it resulted in a asphyxiation, if you will, of 96% of all marine species. Today, we are at least 2% of the way towards the Permian mass extinction and accelerating because today's fossil fuel emissions is highest on record. We're accelerating towards that precipice rather than decelerating. And we shouldn't fool ourselves. It doesn't matter how much renewable energy there is on the planet. If we're not cutting fossil fuels, we're not making progress. And to that end, the challenge and the opportunity is to regenerate life in the ocean during these difficult times. Our work in marine permaculture at the Climate Foundation works to close the nutrient value chain gaps that are created by anthropogenic ocean warming. And there's a couple ways of doing that. People have studied in the past upwelling nutrients from just 150 meters below the surface to the surface and getting the seaweeds and microalgae to grow. And that works. It takes a fair amount of renewable energy to do it, but it's doable. It's good for actually regenerating kelp forests. It's good for even keeping coral reefs cooler during the summer months, where we're in the middle of the fourth global bleaching, this one the worst, affecting at least 56% of all the corals on the planet. Then the alternative is, in fact, something we're doing now in the Western Pacific, and that is to have a seaweed platform that lowers at sunset down 100, 150 meters where there's nutrient levels that are enough the seaweed acts like a sponge and soaks up these nutrients at night. And at sunrise, we lift the platform back up to the surface where it soaks up sunlight and carbon dioxide in the top meter of the sea. And it's this combination of deep nutrients and surface sunlight and carbon dioxide that enables these seaweeds to grow repletely. It enables them to provide food security for humanity and for 8 million species that cannot vote. Furthermore, about a quarter of the seaweed falls off the platform during growth and sinks 1,000 meters a day to the abyssal seafloor, where it can remain for centuries, particularly in the abyssal Pacific Ocean. All this to say, we have a quarter acre in the water now that is growing well, and we have plans to scale to a full hectare over the coming year. And this will enable us to build a sustainable way for seaweed communities from the Philippines to Indonesia to the coast of Canada and the US to actually regenerate thousands of square kilometers of lost kelp forest just in the US and Australia alone over the past 100 years. And of course, we can do this for 100 big ocean nations that need to regenerate their primary production and ensure food security during the difficult decades to come. So if you have the opportunity, check out marine permaculture at the Climate Foundation. We're always looking for volunteers and people who can help contribute to this effort, and look forward to engaging in these conversations to keep our oceans alive. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to hear this news. You mentioned the platform goes down and then back up in the daytime. I hadn't heard that. Last time I heard about your project, you were going to pump up water from the depths with some sort of pumps. But this sounds like a new innovation. I want you to know that I did this last Monday, I did a talk show about seaweed without you. There are other people in the world working on the topic, and we did one. And it's on our website. It's the most recent of the forums on the website tosavetheworld.ca. You go there, you find a scroll bar, and you click on the first one, and you can watch this show. I don't think the quality of the sound was as good as it should be, but I'll be writing up an article sort of summarizing some of the findings that they came up with for the next issue of the magazine, which will be the July issue. Thank you so much, Brian, for your work on seaweed and for bringing us up to date about your project. I know that Eric Poole has joined us and has been sitting patiently, hoping that I would call on him, but he never really put his hand up. Eric, unmute yourself if you want to say hello. Say hello. I haven't looked at you in about 30 years, but I recognized you. And please unmute yourself. And if you have a thought you want to share with us, let it fly.
Okay, well, maybe a couple of thoughts in terms of what's already been said. As you know, Meta, I'm a well-socialized free market capitalism lover economist. Mm-hmm. First, on corruption. Economists tend to view corruption as side payments. And I think it's a real side issue. It's a real potential source of, it's not really that important in the Ukrainian situation. I mean, you know, the former Soviet Union and its components did have a high level of corruption, and that's one of the reasons why perhaps the Soviet Union ultimately imploded. Anybody who has been following Ukraine for over the last several decades knew that Ukraine had a very serious corruption problem, and that most likely explained why Ukraine had one of the lowest real per capita material standards of living in Europe. And that's an important little factoid in terms of understanding where Ukraine is going to go in the future, because you've had well over 8 million refugees flee Ukraine, 3 million plus to Russia, the Russian Federation, and the rest mostly to rich Western democracies. As far as I can tell, most of those immigrants will not come back, or refugees, I should say, will not come back to Ukraine because they're now living in better societies. And they're living in better societies from a perspective of security and economic outcomes. And they're living in societies that don't have the ethnic tensions that Ukraine certainly now has as a result of the war and events since 2014. The other thing I was going to say is that I think Putin continues to remind the West about nuclear weapons, because it appears that a lot of voters in NATO member countries really have very little understanding of nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons strategy. And I could talk about this probably for a very long time, but I'll just mention the very important support for Israel's regional monopoly on nuclear weapons, which I view as extremely dangerous and destabilizing, far more dangerous from the perspective of an eventual nuclear conflict than the current proxy war in Ukraine. And that's basically because both the United States and Israel have been bending over backwards and walking over shards of glass to essentially demonstrate very loudly to the rest of the world how fantastically useful these nuclear weapons are to Israel. Because Israel isn't using those weapons just for purposes of deterrence or for defense. Israel is using those nuclear weapons to acquire territory, land, and resources. And with the ongoing attacks against Iran, for example, both the United States and Israel are reminding not just Iran, but the entire world that nuclear weapons are very, very attractive. Now, I don't think that Israel is going to target Ottawa or Washington or Brussels or whatever have you. But this demonstration effect essentially means that the United States has lost control of nuclear weapons proliferation. It doesn't have any ethical or moral standing in that game whatsoever. So imagine a scenario sometime in the future when a much smaller power acquires nuclear weapons. We already have Pakistan with nuclear weapons, which is really quite scary if you think about it. And there is optimistically a limited regional nuclear war. By the way, that would take care of your climate change issue, but let's not talk about that. So there's a limited nuclear war that pumps all kinds of crap into the atmosphere, right? And then let's compare that to the obesity-sitting dementia epidemic in the United States and other rich Western countries. So the health outcomes in places like the United States at the head of the gang, and then other countries, and to a large extent Canada too, are absolutely awful. So you could guess or surmise that a limited regional nuclear war should be a survivable event for people in rich developed countries, but a large fraction of the population will get sick and eventually die because their health outcomes are so bad. Obesity.
That is a very interesting scenario. I expect we could have a whole conversation about that, but we are getting very close to the end, and I have 1 minute in which I want to make my own pitch. I want all of you to have a look at the new course that I have created. You can go to Udemy, Udemy, on your browser, and that is a platform that provides online courses for people, and mine is for free. This one is for free. You can take the whole thing, even if you do all the homework and out of doors assignments. You can do it in 10 or 15 hours. But if you just want to listen to the video things, you can do that in 2 hours. And I would love to have all of you enroll in my course and take at least look at the videos. Do the homework if you feel ambitious. But go there and look for this course. It's called Become a Climate Change Influencer. And it's the name of the course, Become a Climate Change Influencer. And be careful because you have to actually ask for the course. Otherwise, they will show all the courses that they offer that might be in any way similar to that title. Or you can look it up for my name, Meta Spencer, or Project Save the World. Meta Spencer is a better one. So look it up and have a look at that. And if you are teaching anything like a course on global warming, it would be a very important thing for you to at least recommend to your students, if not actually put it on a course outline, because I think it's an important training program for people who want to learn to be leaders in this issue of climate change. So I have now exceeded my 4 p.m. shut-off time. If anybody has an urgent thing that you wish to say now, put your hand up quickly, and I won't give you more than 20 seconds. And if you urgently need to say something, otherwise, I'm about to say goodbye and to say come in next time, the end of the last Sunday in June. We'll say goodbye. All right. Thanks, folks. It's nice to see you again, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Carry on. Bye.
Bye.
Project Save the World produces these forums. This is episode 606. Watch them or listen to them as audio podcasts on our website, tosavetheworld.ca. People share information there about 6 global issues, and we welcome your comments too. To find a particular talk show, check the scroll list on the homepage or use the search bar. Project Save the World also produces a quarterly online publication, Peace Magazine, which now serves It's a free of charge newsletter to help mobilize knowledge about 6 global threats to humankind. We gladly email the magazine as a PDF or link to any interested organization in the world that works to prevent a global catastrophe involving war and weapons, global warming, famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, or cyber risks. Just email us at office@peacemagazine.org and we'll add your group's email address without charge to our list. Please type "Subscribe my group" as the subject of your email. For individual subscriptions at $20 Canadian per year, go to pressreader.com on your browser and search for Peace Magazine.